The night was colder than she had ever remembered. The wind cut through her thin coat like blades of glass, and the city streets that once seemed alive with light and laughter now felt like an endless tunnel of darkness. She sat on the edge of the pavement, clutching a worn-out bag that held the last fragments of her life, an old photograph, a tattered sweater, and a notebook filled with dreams that now seemed impossible. The world had taken everything from her, her family, her home, her stability, her sense of belonging, and she wondered if anyone would ever see her as more than a shadow fading into the night. If you believe in kindness, in the power of second chances, and in the beauty of humanity even in its darkest hours, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness. Your support helps spread stories of hope that the world desperately needs. Her name was Clara, and just 6 months earlier, she had been a woman full of plans. She had a steady job at a small bookstore, where the scent of old paper and coffee became her daily comfort. She had an apartment, not big but cozy enough to feel safe. And she had her mother, her last family member, who despite illness, filled Clara's evenings with gentle laughter and stories that painted life with colors of hope. But life can be merciless, and when her mother's health worsened, the medical bills consumed everything Clara had saved. Every paycheck disappeared into hospital visits, medications, and care. The bookstore eventually closed due to declining sales, leaving Clara without a job, and just weeks later, she lost her mother, the one person who had always believed in her. The day she buried her mother, the world seemed to stand still, yet inside her chest, it collapsed. With no relatives to turn to, no job, and mounting rent she couldn't pay, Clara's landlord eventually pushed her out of the only home she had ever known. In a matter of weeks, her life spiraled from fragile normalcy to complete despair. The streets became her shelter, the corners her hiding place, and the kindness of strangers, when it came at all, her only source of survival. Clara learned quickly how invisible people can become when they have nothing. Crowds walked past her as though she didn't exist. Sometimes she caught their eyes, but most turned away, as if the sight of her suffering was too heavy to carry. Nights were the worst, cold, dangerous, and filled with the echo of fears she couldn't silence. She slept with one arm wrapped around her small bag, terrified someone might steal what little she had left. Hunger became her constant companion, gnawing at her stomach until she grew dizzy from weakness. There were days when she thought about giving up, about letting the cold swallow her completely, because hope seemed like a word meant for others, not for her. One particular evening, after a long day of searching trash bins for something to eat, Clara sat outside a bakery, watching people buy warm loaves of bread and cakes. The smell made her heart ache with longing, and she pulled her knees to her chest, trying to disappear. She was so tired, tired of being overlooked, tired of fighting for scraps, tired of pretending that tomorrow might be different. She lowered her head and whispered to herself, maybe this is it. Maybe this is all life has left for me. But just as tears began to sting her eyes, a shadow fell across her. She looked up to see a man, older, with silver hair and gentle eyes. He wasn't like the others who hurried past. He stood there, really looking at her, as though he saw not just her torn clothes and tired face but the person hidden beneath. He carried a small paper bag and without a word, he offered it to her. Inside was a sandwich, still warm, and a bottle of water. Clara hesitated, suspicion mingling with desperation, but hunger won. She accepted it with trembling hands, whispering a soft thank you. The man gave her a kind smile before walking away, leaving her stunned. That small act of kindness should have been insignificant, just a sandwich on a cold night. But to Clara, it was the first flicker of warmth she had felt in months. It told her she wasn't completely invisible, that perhaps there was still goodness in the world. The next evening, the man returned. He introduced himself as Samuel, a retired teacher who lived a few blocks away. He didn't ask invasive questions or make her feel ashamed. He simply offered her another meal, along with a blanket this time. And as the nights went by, he began sitting with her for a few minutes, telling stories of his teaching years, of the students who reminded him of the resilience he saw in her eyes. Clara listened quietly, hardly believing that someone cared enough to spend time with her. For the first time since losing everything, Clara felt a spark of hope. Samuel's presence reminded her that her story wasn't finished yet. Slowly, he encouraged her to think about what she wanted, what she dreamed of before life had fallen apart. She admitted that she had always loved writing, that the notebook in her bag was filled with poems and stories she never shared with anyone. Samuel listened with genuine interest and told her, "Clara, the world may have taken much from you, but it cannot take your voice. You still have that." Encouraged by his words, Clara began writing again, scribbling under the streetlights, pouring her grief and longing onto paper. Samuel noticed her passion and brought her a stack of used journals and pens, telling her that her words mattered. And then, one evening, he surprised her with something even greater. He had spoken to the local library where he volunteered, and they agreed to let Clara spend her days there, reading, writing, and even helping organize books. It wasn't a job yet, but it was a step away from the cold streets, a step back toward dignity. Clara's days slowly transformed. She found herself surrounded by books again, a place where stories reminded her of resilience, courage, and the possibility of new beginnings. Samuel visited often, bringing encouragement and reminding her that even broken lives could be pieced together again. The librarians began to notice her dedication and kindness, and soon enough, they offered her a small part-time job helping with cataloging. It wasn't much, but it was the first paycheck she had seen in months, and when she held it in her hands, tears streamed down her face. With Samuel's support, Clara was able to save little by little, and eventually she rented a modest room. The day she turned the key in the lock and stepped inside, she collapsed onto the bed and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. She wasn't on the streets anymore. She wasn't invisible. She was beginning again. Weeks turned into months, and Clara's strength returned. She kept writing, and with Samuel's encouragement, she submitted one of her stories to a local community magazine. To her surprise, it was published. Seeing her words in print filled her with a sense of purpose she had almost forgotten existed. She realized that perhaps her pain had given her a voice that could reach others who felt hopeless and lost. Her life was far from perfect, but it was no longer defined by despair. She had work, a safe place to sleep, and above all, she had a friend who had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. Samuel had not rescued her with money or miracles, he had rescued her with kindness, with the simple act of believing that she still mattered. That belief gave her the strength to fight for her future. Clara's journey became a quiet testament to the power of compassion. One kind soul had reminded her that even when everything is stripped away, humanity and hope can still survive. And in her heart, she made a promise, that one day, when she was able, she would pass on that kindness to someone else lost in the shadows. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful stories that remind the world of the beauty of compassion and second chances. And before we end, here's a special request, please comment below with just one word, hope, if you believe that kindness can truly change lives. Because sometimes, all it takes is one kind soul to turn a life around. And for Clara, Samuel was that soul. His kindness gave her the courage to believe again, to rise again, and to carry within her the truth that no matter how dark life becomes, hope is never fully lost, it just waits for someone to ignite it again.